Screen shows me frozen. All right. Well, then let's get started. I apologize for those. If you got kicked out or if you get kicked out, I'm so sorry. I don't know why. I've reset the bitrate to accommodate the speed that YouTube likes. So hopefully that works. Maybe I'll go back and edit this stream for those who are going to watch this afterwards, just so that they can get, to the good stuff. Anyway, I'll kind of go over what I said earlier and just review that for those who missed that. My journey with first aid has been long. It goes back to being 12 years old and weirdly enough, actually paying attention to a first aid class. And that was something that changed. It didn't change my life when I was 12 years old. It's not like I remember it and everything changed, but I have more respect for wilderness first aid because of it. If you guys, as you're listening, if you want to just keep me updated with how the quality of the feed, if it changes or anything like that, or especially if something weird happens, let me know. And we'll get started. Okay. So one of the first things that I think is important to say about any wilderness first aid course is people often ask the question, why? What's the point? I have an opinion about just first aid courses in general. Okay. There's a distinction in first aid courses where there's the kind of first aid that you would take where you're going to have an ambulance come to your house and take over from you because you called 911 or you called emergency services. Okay, that's a very common kind of first aid, and a lot of employers actually prefer that type of first aid, just because it's kind of industry standards. All right, well, because that kind of first aid is what everybody wants or has been wanting, at least up until the pandemic. That's the kind of first aid most people are familiar with. Here's the weird thing. And here's what we know about nature. Nature is extremely unpredictable. And frequently, areas that you would never call wilderness areas can become, in an instant, wilderness areas. I'm just going to use Ukraine right now as a good example. People living in the Ukraine regular first aid is almost completely useless in those situations, because what most people are going to need is long-term care. They're going to need the kind of care where it's going to be days before, medical professionals are getting there. Regular first aid treats people who have minutes, before EMS shows up, and then they hand it off. Wilderness first aid goes beyond that. With the unpredictability of weather and, these kinds of phenomena that can creep up, where weather-related or environment-related situations, we're starting to see them more and more frequently. There was more fires in Canada last year than I can ever remember. Floods and just natural disasters in general, all of those create situations that potentially cut people off, and your reliance on those regular kinds of, you call 911 and there's an ambulance, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. I predict will be happening less and less. So the need for this kind of first aid, in fact, my prediction for the future is we're going to stop calling it wilderness first aid. And it's going to be the kind of first aid that we need on a more regular basis. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I thought, hey, let's talk about wilderness first aid. It is absolutely, I think, essential for everyone who goes in the outdoors. And I'll say something about that in a second. But I think it's growing more for just the average person to know some of the techniques that are taught in a wilderness first aid course. I think we'll start seeing it in regular first aid courses. So that's my little spiel. Here's the biggest thing. So I want to talk about what makes it different from a regular first aid course. I think what the biggest reason why I think wilderness first aid is different is because it deals more with real life. Certainly some of the providers that I have used in the past have made it more real. So they'll focus on things like explaining the physiology of what happens in your body when, for example, you get bonked on the head. More like regular first aid courses are a lot more algorithmic, meaning they're intended to give you the shortcut to how to treat, situation X. It's like, here's the problem, do this to solve this problem, right? Those kind of courses, those what's the right word for them? Public courses? What am I trying to? No, like urban related courses. That's the word I keep dancing around. An urban focused first aid course, it gives you the algorithms, the like cheat sheets on how to get to the first aid, fix the problem fast. Okay. Wilderness first aid, at least some of the providers I've worked with, they don't focus so much on that. They're actually trying to help you to understand why the body is doing some of the things that it's doing and start thinking about what things to anticipate as a result of those things. And I think that's very powerful in a first aid course, getting people to think about why these things are happening instead of just what to do to fix it. Yeah. And you get that more with a wilderness first aid course than any other course. So much of those urban first aid courses are all like, here's the stuff I taught you, and then here's the test. You take the test, and then check mark, you got your certificate. And there might be a few little scenarios, and those are always fun, but it's just not realistic. I've had more fun both teaching and being in wilderness first aid courses than I can think in any courses I've ever taken. And that might just be me, but I'm really kind of plugging wilderness first aid here because I think it's not only is it a valuable skill, it's something that, it's fun. They're a lot more fun. Yeah, put it that way. Okay. Something that I think, another really cool part about wilderness first aid is it's way more hands-on. You're doing a lot more actual skills, and you're being tested on those skills rather than a piece of paper. You often get paper tests with the urban kind of first aid. Okay, I've kind of talked about a lot of this stuff. So who are some of the big providers of wilderness first aid? If you Google wilderness first aid, you're most likely going to come up the first provider of wilderness first aid, and it depends on your region. If I type it in here, obviously I'm going to get all Canadian options. Wherever you're from, you'll type it in and you'll get whatever YouTube algorithms tell you. Not YouTube, internet algorithms that say this is what they're so and so has paid the most money for. Anyway, often you're going to get Red Cross at the top of the list. Now, I didn't do this live stream to attack Red Cross. I hope that doesn't come through with this particular live stream. But I will say, when I was a wilderness first aid instructor with Red Cross, man, was it clunky. And I'll even point out, I don't know if I can do this easily. Let me see if I can just turn off that. Look, a little picture in picture with me. There you can see my little spinny. That's all I've been seeing for the last basically 10 minutes. Here, let me show you this. So this is what comes up when I type in wilderness first aid. Okay. Oh yeah, you can't see it. Duh. I have to there you go. Now you can see it. This is what comes up when I type in wilderness first aid. I get the Canadian Red Cross, or whatever Red Cross is associated with. I'm guessing you might get something similar. To put it lightly, it's clunky. Like if I go in here and go, find a course. Yes, I am interested in taking a course in wilderness first aid. It's kind of like, it's really, I don't know how to describe it. It's like select program and category. Okay. Program. Well, I'm not looking for an instructor. I'm not looking for a conference. Babysitter and child. Okay. There it is. first aid. And I'm like, where's wilderness first aid? It's not on there. Okay, so I'll pick first aid CPR, right? Oh, there it is right there. Wilderness and remote first aid. And you're kind of like, well, I really want advanced wilderness first aid. It's not an option on here. I can't actually pick that. Okay, well, let's pick a date range. Let's just go, I don't know, the 30th of April. And let's say I could probably take a course all the way up to the 30th of September. I'm curious. I could take any course, all delivery methods, and I'll put in my postal code and search. Let's see all those results. There's nothing. There's no results on this clunky. Anyway, this was the top choice for wilderness first aid. Okay, it's not that good. I've had lots of experience with Red Cross in the past. There's often a disconnect between the instructors, the people who deliver the courses, and then the people who make the courses. I don't know if that's still the case, but just judging by this website, it probably still is. Let me plug a company, and again, I am not endorsed by these people. This isn't like I'm not getting paid by these people. I've just taken courses from these people, and it's called Wilderness Medical Associates. Okay, they are by far, like leaps and bounds above where the Red Cross Wilderness First Aid programs are. Okay, leaps and bounds. Same amount of hours for the courses. There's different levels of courses. I believe, so Wilderness Medical Associates offers all three levels. There's a 20-hour level, a 40-hour level, and an 80-hour level. Their courses are, they got lots of options for courses. They're international. Okay. I think they're the top competitor for Red Cross. The irony is they are, as far as quality of programming, quality of courses, they are way better. So guaranteed there's a Wilderness Medical Associates course available near you, wherever you live. Even if you live in Germany or in the UK, like you guys do. My two supporters in this chat right now. You'll find these courses and you can take them in the basic level. So the standard level is I think it's about a 20-hour level. The Wilderness Advanced, and then what's called a Wilderness First Responder level. Yeah. All excellent courses. The instructors, at least when I started taking this, here, let me switch back to camera and then you can see me. So the instructors, when I was first taking these courses back over 12 years ago, one of the instructors had to be a doctor. I don't believe they do that anymore. They don't have an actual doctor on site. However, the instructors often have to have gone through some kind of on-site training where they've worked either in an emergency situation or they've worked alongside a doctor. There has to be an element of actual legitimate first aid training. And I think that's fantastic. Okay, the stories that I've heard from my instructors for Wilderness Medical Associates are awesome. That's not to say that other programs don't have instructors with that kind of background, but you're guaranteed to get it with Wilderness Medical Associates. Okay. So they do a great job. And then the different levels there. So a 20-hour course gives you kind of the basics. You do a little bit outside. You still get you get a certification in whatever is the equivalent in the urban version of that. So you can use that certificate. A lot of people ask that question about Wilderness First Aid, but I don't want to get Wilderness First Aid because it'll mean that I won't have first aid for whatever job I'm supposed to have it for. No, absolutely. It counts for both. Okay. So you get first aid in both wilderness and in the urban side, and that's pretty standard. I don't know if that's true across the world, but I do know for Canada, especially in the United States, it works both ways. At the 40-hour and especially the 80-hour level, a lot of opportunities open up. So if you're bringing groups of people in the outdoors, 20 hours is not going to cut it. You need at least a 40-hour. in order to manage groups of people from a first aid perspective in the outdoors. And then, of course, the 80-hour courses, those cater more to guides and outdoor professionals. So, yeah, that, I mean, in a nutshell, that's what wilderness first aid is. That's what it does. And that's why you need it. I would say these days, it's the kind of thing that not only is it helpful in an outdoor setting, it's like I said, it's going to be super valuable as our things shift around, as our as the world heats up and as weather systems are moving things around, and it's unpredictable at this point. So it's nice to have a little bit of peace of mind knowing, hey, if things hit the fan, you've got the training to deal with emergencies in your own home and then in a long-term kind of a way. So I can't stress how important this particular first aid is in just today's climate. So cool. You guys, I should have mentioned that if you had questions as I was rambling on here, because I can go on about first aid for hours, and I'm just going to keep it short. But if you've got questions and you want to ask questions, either do it live, my two people watching right now live, go ahead. Or if you're watching this after the fact, leave your comments. Go ahead and leave a comment. And I usually get back to commenters on this channel because it's just so big. There's just so many people to sift through the comments. I'm usually respond to comments fairly quickly. So yeah, if you have a comment or a question about general first aid, or you're kind of looking for answer to a particular question regarding delivery of first aid, or what you need for anything like that, anything at all about first aid, let me know in the comments, and I would be happy to respond. Oh, great question, Murdoch. You have good questions. The question, have I ever been in an emergency situation on a hike? And that was one of the things I was going to mention. I wrote it in my notes here and I didn't say it. I've done more first aid on hikes in the outdoors by far than first aid in a classroom. And then just to put that in perspective, I've spent far more time in a classroom than I have outdoors, right? Like probably by a ratio of like 10 to 1. Okay. In terms of my time on this planet, I've invested far more time in a school situation where I was the go-to first aid guy or girl, whatever, in my school. And I've done first aid in schools. Don't get me wrong. I got some good stories there, but I've done far more in the outdoors than I have indoors. So that tells you something right there about why first aid in an outdoor situation is more valuable. And I'll give you one story. I don't have time to share all of my stories, but I'll give you one particular story. I'd taken some students hiking into Jasper National Park, and this was actually before I lived in Jasper. And we were climbing up this. It was June. Yeah, June. Lots of snow, and we were kind of hiking across this flat area with a lot of snow, and you couldn't really see anything below. And we're hiking along the crunching down, sometimes punching into the snow every once in a while, but no big deal. And this one girl punched in really fast, and her leg went all the way down to the snow, came back up, and blood is going out of her knee. Okay. This big flap of skin is hanging out there, and blood's just kind of spurting. And there's other adults watching this, and one of them, I watched her face just go white immediately. And my training kicks in, and I'm like, okay, we stopped the bleeding. Let's make sure that that's stopped. Let's get something on it. Let's wrap it, and let's get down. Right. So we did that, and I pulled some stuff out of my first aid kit, cleaned it off. We wrapped it, put a little bit of Polysporin in there, but the priority was stop the bleeding, get her down. And she was fine. We got the funny part was, this is the best part. We got down to the trailhead, and immediately one of the parents sees it and they go, well, we got to have a look at it. And I'm like, we don't really have to have a look at it. We can actually wait, we got a window of about 24 hours before anything real serious happens, as long as we've stopped the bleeding. And we'd stopped the bleeding. Oh no, we have to look at it. And I was like, okay, you seem to know more than I do. And so this parent pulls off all the dressing that I put on it. Sure enough, it starts bleeding because this parent pulled off my dressings that I put on. And because it was quite deep, the parent's like, we've got to use hydrogen peroxide on this. And they go to get it. And I just was like, okay, I'm stepping in here and I'm stopping this. Hydrogen peroxide, of course, I don't know if you know this, it's kind of one of those older remedies for, let's kill everything to make sure that we, kill everything so that if there is the possibility of infection, it's gone. The sad part of what hydrogen peroxide does, if you don't know this, stop using it, by the way. Hydrogen peroxide kills everything, including all tissue. It actually starts burning and destroying living tissue. And it's one of the reasons if you ever had a parent or someone use hydrogen peroxide on you when you were young, you probably still have the scar. It leaves a permanent scar. I've got, well, it's kind of long gone. I got nicked there when I was a kid. There's kind of a remnant of it there on my elbow. But yeah, when people use hydrogen peroxide on a wound, it like destroys everything in that wound. And so they had gotten the hydrogen peroxide and they were like ready to do it. And I'm like, stop. Okay. And I was like, nope, we're wrapping this. They'll do stitches and stuff in the ER, but we have about 24 hours to get there. Anyway, to fast forward time and years later, this girl came back and showed me her scar, which was non-existent. Okay. She showed me where it had happened. And she said, like, thank goodness you were there because, and I can't remember if it was an uncle or someone that was in the group, was like, if that person had poured that hydrogen peroxide on, I'd have a permanent scar there on her knee. And anyway, that's just one story. That to me is one of the huge benefits of knowing first aid, is knowing, what's true and what's not true. And you'd be surprised how many people I've stopped from going to hydrogen peroxide. Both hydrogen peroxide and alcohol. You'll sometimes hear people using alcohol on wounds. They both have similar effects. Even povidone iodine, if it's in the wrong concentration, will burn out tissue. So that's another one. I wouldn't avoid that povidone iodine. You can use it in a solution of, I believe it's, I'd have to go look it up. I can't remember what the percentage is. I don't use it that often. But no, I mean, the best thing to use is like clean, sterile water and lots of it. Start there. If you have access to it, Polysporin or some kind of a, what's the term for those? Not a anticoagulant, but there's a word for it. I'm hunting for it and I can't remember what it is, but it basically is something that does kill bacteria, but it doesn't kill cells. That's what polysporin does. And so it's not an astringent either. Anyway, I'm sure someone's going to tell me what it is. But having that in your first aid kit, I think is essential. A small little tube of polysporin works really, really well. And just a cool head, know what to do in the right situation. The one lady that kind of went pale with that, she kind of apologized a lot afterwards, going like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that I freaked out." And I'm like, "No, that's pretty normal." What time? I got time for one more story. I'll tell it anyways because it's a lot of fun. So this one time, I'll just say this quickly. As one time, I was on a first aid course. I was sitting. We were like practicing all of our like our skills because we were like advanced wilderness first aid responders, and we're like, oh yeah, we're so good at this. We know what we're doing. And as we're practicing, and this is not a joke, we're sitting there, we're near a highway, and we couldn't see it because we were lower than the highway, but the highway kind of went past us, and we heard the kind of sound of a car skidding, and then the crunch of bumpers and fenders hitting. And we were like, it's an accident. And because we're all keeners, right? We're all like, we're going to go and we're going to get in there because we're the first aiders. And I was part of that. I was like, we're going to get in there. And so we all started running. We're like, yeah, we're going to do this. Let's do it. So we all started running, and I was like, oh, I need the first aid kit. It was in my car. So I ran back, got my first aid kit. So they had about a 30-second, 45-second head start on me. Okay. When I got there, it was like exactly what our instructors talked about. And you'll see this too if you're into first aid and you like doing first aid. Well, talking about it and practicing is one thing. Actually doing it is an entirely different thing. When I arrived on that scene, most of the class had kind of gone into like stunned mode, right? Because it was an accident scene, right? People are hurt and people are, in pain, and it's gross, right? So they're standing around. They're like, what do we do? And I felt a moment of it too, because it was like, oh, this is real. This is like real people. We're doing this. These aren't scenarios. We're not practicing first aid. We're actually doing this. And like part of my brain wanted to just stare at what's going on for a second. And there was a off-duty paramedic that had jumped out of her car and was like taking on this role. I say we're first responders, but we're in training, if that makes sense. It's one thing, like I say, it's one thing to take the courses and another thing to actually do it. And when this off-duty paramedic was kind of taking charge, I was like, all right, I got this, right? And I'm like, oh, what do you want me to do? And okay, put your hands here. And so I just sat behind this poor woman and had my hands just basically holding her head still. I won't go into all the details. It's pretty gory, but it was a real lesson about how to respond in first aid situations. It's not just a oh, I've got the training, therefore I'm trained and I know what to do. You have to cross that. You have to decide to act. You have to take the time to actually do something. And I was surprised at how few of us actually wanted to step in, even though we were in the middle of a first aid course and we were taking this, as part of our training. We were all standing around just going I don't know what to do. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm coming around to the end here. My point that I really wanted to make is I think that this kind of training goes a long way. And if you're able to get in on some training, or if there's an opportunity to take this and you can convince your employer or whoever you work for, even if you work for yourself, and you want some understanding of how to respond in these situations, even if you start at the lowest level, you take the 20-hour version, I think you'll find it quite interesting. And especially if you go with that Wilderness Medical Associates, their instruction is phenomenal. And of course, the context is wonderful as well. They give the physiology of why your body responds that way. I just found that fascinating. So yeah, there you go. I hope that helps you out. Do you receive some kind of supervision or psychological coaching as wilderness first aid trainer? Well, certainly not as the Red Cross. The Red Cross wilderness first aid instruction course that I took was about how to get kids to pass the course. Kids, you're the people that you're training. And then, yeah, I can go into even more detail there. It was... Yeah, I know. It's the Red Cross version. I'm really not. I hope that I'm not going to get sued by Red Cross or something here from this video. But I would say there was no training at all from their side about psychological coaching. Certainly, I've had I've like, it's part of the course in Wilderness Medical Associates to go through that, the processing of situations, that how do you deal with the trauma of seeing things. And, they mention it in the Red Cross, but they go through it quite in depth in the Wilderness Medical Associates course. So, yeah, I would say definitely worth it. Cool. I'm so glad that you're here, Murdoch and Tracy, to like be a bit of a sounding board for this, and hopefully others that watch this will enjoy it. Unfortunately, there's I don't know the end of that story, Tracy, with the accident. I don't know how the woman fared, but I'm leaving out some of the very gory details from that because it was. Yeah, maybe that'll be in a future video. I am considering doing an edited YouTube video about first aid. So, hey, this is a great place to kind of throw that out there and see what people think. If this video gets lots of views and it starts showing up in people's feeds and there's more call for it, absolutely, I'll make a video going into more detail about first aid. So. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here and watching me go through all of this. Since I can't see when my feed ends, I don't know when it like shuts off over here. I'm just gonna guess. I'm gonna guess when to shut it down. So yeah, I'll end the stream here when I'll stop streaming, and then that way it'll just go blank on the other end there, and then I'll know that it stopped. Oh, I see there's some more comments. You guys have more comments here. You volunteer mountain people. Oh yeah, that's cool.